What's up, Bodyweight Warriors, and welcome back to another video and a new year. Happy 2022. 2021 is behind us, thankfully. Hopefully we move onwards and upwards this year, and in the spirit of a new year, I kind of wanted to share with you 3 things that I wish I knew when I got into or was getting into bodyweight training, flexibility training, handstand training. And I say this not with the perspective that I know everything now. I certainly don't regret making the mistakes that I made. I think mistakes are actually really important in anything that you do because you learn a lot from them. So don't necessarily follow these to a T, but if you want to make gains, if you want to make progress, that's ultimately what I find is fun when it comes to training, is making the progress. Then I guarantee these 3 will improve that aspect of things. But rules are there to be broken, especially if you want to have fun and mix things up. Before I jump into those 3 things, I want to ask you the question: is there anything that you would recommend to the other people watching this video, something that you think was particularly helpful in your journey, something that you've learned? Leave it in the comment section down below. I'd be interested to hear if you agree with the things that I have to say or what you particularly found helpful. Point number 1, long-term consistency trumps short-term intensity. Fantastic Bruce Lee quote, really the thing that applies to achieving anything in life. You need to persevere with it, you need to stay consistent, you need to put in the work, very simply. This one really applies to several instances with training. Primarily, I would just say with the kind of mindset that I would take into anything you want to achieve, be prepared to work on that thing for at least 18 months, maybe even 2 years. If you go into working towards anything with that mindset, with the fact that it's going to take you perhaps that long of consistent work, focus on that thing to get it, you're definitely going to achieve that thing, and probably in most instances achieve it a little bit sooner than that. But certainly having that perspective, things in bodyweight training, skills, handstands, splits, they take time. They don't happen in 30 days, in 7 days. It's just BS. That doesn't happen. Maybe in the fringe cases, the very genetically gifted of us. But for most people, give yourself time. It also applies in the sense of what you end up doing. I certainly probably wasted 2, maybe 3 years of my 8 years that I've been doing this now, just flip-flopping between different things that I wanted to do. I would, spend 4 to 6 weeks focused on the planche, then spend 4 to 6 weeks focused on something else. And ultimately, I did a lot of training in that time. I was training like 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, but the progress I made wasn't so great. And it's really the reason for that was I just wasn't consistent with anything. As I said, I don't regret any of these things because I tried lots of different stuff out, but ultimately I like making progress with training, and that didn't elicit progress. I've made the most progress in the past 3 or 4 years where I've just been very focused on few things and stuck to them consistently. The final way I would mention this is that oftentimes with New Year, we've got a load of new goals and we want to attack those things, and maybe we'll be like, okay, I'm going to train 5 or 6 days a week for 2 hours a day, and that's how we jump into it, and kind of we end up burning out after 1 to 2 months. That isn't the best thing. I would set things up in a way that you can manage long term. Think, how are you going to train for the rest of your life? Ultimately, fitness is something that we need to keep checking in, keep depositing into a nice health bank account for the rest of our life. You either use it or you lose it. Doing something 2 to 3 times a week, but consistently over a year, is much better than doing something 5 times a week and then stopping for a couple of weeks because you burnt out and then going back and forth. I personally, at the moment, my strength training is 3 days per week, 60 to 90 minutes at most. That's my strength training. I've done much more in the past. I made much less progress. Like, for me, what matters is what I can do with a high quality of effort, not necessarily a high quantity. Ultimately, find a plan, stick to it for 3, 6, maybe even longer, and just do the work and let progress happen. If you do want a program, obviously I'm going to add some shameless plugs here, but you don't have to go buy my stuff. There's stuff like, Reddit Bodyweight Fitness. They've got a bunch of useful links and references on there. There's a whole host of people such as Fitness FAQs, Calisthenic Movements, that do great programs. I personally have my app in which I have a whole host of programs for balance, strength, moves, skills moves, flexibility, and we've also got the newly started up balance, strength and flexibility, which is a one-to-one coaching that I made with some friends of mine, and there's limited spaces on that as it's a beta at the moment. So again, I'll link to those in the description. I'm not going to go on any more about that. Point number 2, this one may be slightly controversial, but it's something that I definitely know held me back, and that is, it's not your technique, you're just weak. I cannot emphasize this one enough. And it does seem to be just as much of a thing in like powerlifting and weightlifting circles as it is in bodyweight fitness, often we end up kind of fixating on the minutia of movements and executing things perfectly, and improving our scapulohumeral rhythm and making sure the shoulder blades are in the correct position. It's like, nah, just do the reps, do the work. Sometimes there is a need for bad form when we try to achieve a movement, whether that is handstands, whether that is handstand push-up, planche, whether that is front splits, middle splits. Ultimately, we're proposing a problem to our body to solve. We know what we want to do on our head, and our body tries to figure out the most efficient way of doing that based on what we know already. Doing lots of these like low intensity movements that look good for Instagram, but in practicality aren't actually that useful, don't really replace just getting freakishly strong in the basics. Strength makes everything easier, just as a fundamental. If we consider our training practice like a pyramid, those skills, anything that we want to achieve, planche, front lever, handstand, all that sort of stuff, that's on the top. That's on the right, the point of the pyramid. It's going to be built on a really wide and broad base of just fundamental conditioning. There's really not much point training front lever if you can only do 1 to 2 chin-ups. There's really not much point training for the handstand if it's hard to hold a handstand against the wall for 10 seconds. And arguably there's not much point training the middle splits if it's hard to hold a horse stance squat for like 20 seconds. Ultimately, there has to be some level of strength foundation to support all of these high level movements, and most time you're just too weak to begin working on them. That's the hard reality of things, and I didn't want to accept that a long time ago. Certainly when I was getting first into calisthenics, I was really excited to work on those high level movements, and again, ultimately I didn't see any progress because I just wasn't strong enough to support it. And then point number 3, very much related to this, the second point, is focus on the few, not the many. And really this comes down to kind of what we're going to focus on when we're training. Ultimately, I would recommend not doing the things that look good for Instagram and just doing the things that work. When we look at sports and disciplines that get freakishly strong, things like powerlifters, they essentially do squat, bench, deadlift. That's what they do. They do those movements over and over and over again. And for some reason in bodyweight training, we have almost like infinite options of what we can do. And that's a great thing, but it's also counterproductive when we just want to get strong. Getting really fundamentally strong with push-ups, with rows, with chin-ups, with pike push-ups or handstand push-ups, that is going to be incredibly beneficial to you, especially in the long run. Just focusing on just those things, when you actually come to try and do the fancy stuff, you're going to find things so much easier. The same applies to handstand. Being able to comfortably hold chest to wall handstand, getting strong in the tuck handstand. Being stronger will make it much easier to control and balance a handstand. And the same thing kind of applies to flexibility as well. If we can build strength through a large range of motion using things like, Romanian deadlifts, using things like the split squat, even dips and chest flies to open up the chest and the shoulders by building strength through range, will give you a fantastic base to develop the goals that you want to develop, whether that is the high-level bodyweight goals or the high-level flexibility goals or your handstand. Focus on getting the basics really, really good. That's kind of what I mentioned when it comes to it's not your technique, you're just weak. The weakness comes from that lack of preparedness, that lack of strength. So really points number 2 and 3 are kind of the same thing, but I cannot emphasize how much I wanted to reiterate that. So yeah, that's me trying to keep things short and sweet. The things that I wish I knew when I started bodyweight training, I'm just imagining now, if I had just done a shitload of handstand push-ups and weighted chin-ups for the past 5 years, how much of a beast I would be. Certainly it will be interesting to see in the next few years where that ends up. As I said at the beginning of this video, if you have anything that I've kind of missed out or you want to develop on or you want to share your own opinion, please do so in the comment section down below. Right next to it is that thumbs up button if you want to support the channel. And if you don't want to miss out on any more future content coming in 2022 to help you with your training goals and everything else that's on this channel, please hit that subscribe button, join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week. Happy New Year. Catch you in the next one. Peace.